Hello and good day. Hope everybody's doing well today. It's nice to be at the conference. Thank you for the invitation. A little bit of background about myself. And one of the most proudest moments really was I received my honorary doctorate last year, and then not because I was a football player for Utah State University where I went, but they had me back to deliver the convocation because of the work I've done in mental health. And to me, that's more important than about anything I can think of right now. It's just that it's been a culmination of a lot of work, and it was nice to be recognized. But I played 10 years in the NFL, all 10 years as a quarterback with the Detroit Lions. And I also today work as a peer-to-peer captain. We put actually a peer-to-peer outreach program in. We reach out to all our alumni. And then I am also a Be Nice advocate, as you can tell by the shirt that I have on today. Anyway, so the title, I bashed around the title, and so I wasn't sure what to have, and but I thought the main theme would be, survive and thrive, because we're in a time right now where, seems like a lot of pressure, a lot of outside, we're getting squeezed from all over, a lot of adversity, a lot of confusion, and also being separated and isolated. And so, how do you survive that? But not just how do you survive it, but how do you thrive and come away in a healthy and also able to move forward and to function through all this? Because quite frankly, how long is it going to go on? I don't know, and nobody knows. And what's the next thing about the next adversity might pop up? So let's work on that. And so I thought survive and thrive would be good. And so the first thing to look at, of course, is what happens when we come across something that's new to us. We question it. And how and our thought process around that, and then what do we do, and how do we work through our mind and kind of turn these machinery on and figure out something and come up with a new idea on how we're going to approach something. Because coming into the unknown, while we approach it and what we come out with is pretty important. And so I thought maybe that would be the way to go. There we go. Sorry about that. So, my story is full of, success as a Detroit Lion. We went to the playoffs twice, won the division one year. I was named MVP. And so there's a lot of success there. The fact just getting to the NFL was a culmination of working really, really hard, getting a scholarship to Utah State University, coming from a small high school in Southern California where I was raised, and being fortunate enough, but also working hard enough to be able to get into the NFL and be successful while I was there. So it's full of successes. It's also full of transitions. And transitions can be difficult on us, right? So going from one thing to another. So every step along the way involves a transition. And you go through transitions. Every day that we do something different, and maybe we go from one grade to the next grade. That's a huge transition. Not going to school at the times when we couldn't go, but we were going from home. That's a transition. Being separated from friends and what's going to happen next. This whole, COVID exercise and things that's going on is a huge transition. And what do we do about those transitions? So, yes, I was faced with a lot of transitions. One of the toughest ones I went through was, of course, when I was released from the Detroit Lions, because I had no idea what to do next. I was 32 years old. I'd worn a uniform since I was 9 years old, and I was a football player. But what am I now? And that was a big transition for me. But anyway, that also came with a lot of loss, loss of identity. Who am I? Didn't know who I was, trying to figure that out. There's also other losses in my life that I went through. Grief, how do you handle that loss, and how do you grieve properly in a way that you can get through it and not get stuck in the grief? And then there's trauma, most everybody's gone through some sort of traumatic event. Some are larger than others, but trauma can mean many things. It can be the loss. It can also be a circumstance that you got involved in that was overwhelming to you. It could be something that you feared for your life from. That can be traumatic, but how we deal with trauma, again, is part of the transitional. It's part of surviving. It's part of thriving. And then, of course, in some cases, and myself being included in one of those, suffering mental illness, when things don't go right, and we have whether it's genetically through our family or, inherited, or a predisposition, which all of a sudden some sort of stressful thing happens to us. And then, it might start, kick off like depression or anxiety disorders, for some bipolar disorder. But, those things are real, and what we do with them is important. And then, of course, mental fitness. And that's the point where I want to kind of get to, which is, what do we do with mental fitness? What does it mean? How do we use mental fitness to get our mental health back? And so those are the things that I want to talk about. And we are talking about them, but I want to go forward here. So let's talk about mental fitness and mental health for a second. As I said, mental fitness is the things that we do, just like physical fitness are the things that we do to become physically healthy. We understand that physical exercises, we understand that, nutrition, we understand those things that we do physically fit to get us, to be physically healthy. And so we have to do certain things, to be mentally healthy. And so our mental health has to do the same way, right? But I want to define mental health. I want to give it a definition that makes sense and something that we can all attain for. So mental health is defined as a state of well-being, okay, in which each and every one of us can realize our own potential. We can also cope with adversity and stresses and normal stresses that happen in our life. We can cope with them. We can be productive, and we can reach our highest potential, and we can be part of our community. That is what a state of well-being and being able to be mentally healthy looks like. It doesn't say anything in there about a diagnosis. The old definition used to say mental health, an absence of mental illness. That was it. It was an absence of mental illness. Well, I think it's much more than that, because I know people that have a mental illness, and I'm one of them, okay, that do a lot of good things to take care of themselves, and they're being fit, and so they can reach this state of well-being, and they can be productive, and they can be part of our community and thrive, as I said, survive and thrive. It can be those things. I also know people that don't have a diagnosis, and maybe they don't even maybe have a mental illness per se, and not recognized as one, but they're not doing the things they need to do to take care of themselves. And so maybe their habits, their sleep patterns, partying or acting out and doing things that aren't really, really healthy. And those things don't give us a sense of well-being. In fact, over a long time of that type of behavior, we will slip into some sort of mental health issue that might surface for us. And so let's look at it this way: state of well-being. And if you don't feel that way, a state of well-being, then let's strive for that, because that's an important part of our health, is to feel that way, because that's what life's all about, is this state of well-being where I feel good about who I am, and I feel enriched, and I feel comfortable in my own skin. And a lot of us don't feel that way, especially when going through transitions. And so I want that to be a thing. At one point in time, I was going to see, a psychiatrist and a therapist, and I would go in because they had put me on some medication, and I would go in and they would ask me, so is it working? And I would say, I don't know. Well, how do you feel? Well, I feel a little bit better than I did yesterday, but is that because of medication, or is it because it's sunny today? What I wanted to say was, how am I supposed to feel? That's what I want to know. And this is how you're supposed to feel: this sense of well-being, comfortable in your skin, feeling good about who you are, and having a good self-esteem about yourself. It's a sense of well-being. So let's shoot for that. I want to talk about two different stories here. Well, one is, when things do go wrong, and then what happens when things go right. But it's around transitions, and this young man's name is Jeff. And at age 15, the transitions he was going through, he had divided living between his parents, so he was going between his father's and his mother's house and going back and forth. And then when he turned 15, he moved in with his father and started off into high school. So as a freshman, he was doing really, really well. The stories go, he was really well connected. He was popular. He was captain of his freshman basketball team. He was funny. He was caring. he had all those things going for him, even though the transitions were there. But over time, something started happening to him. And these symptoms started to pop up. He started getting like sleeping too much, or he wasn't sleeping at all. So they say he was up in the middle of the night, pacing the floors, and then be really tired in the morning. His friend said that he just didn't seem happy anymore, that things were just blah to him, and he couldn't get excited or motivated about things. And in fact, over time, he got to the point where his grades fell to the point where he wasn't able to play on the team anymore. He was benched because his grades were too low. Appetite can change, where somebody starts eating too much, kind of like comfort food eating, or somebody who just is so stressed out they don't eat, loss of concentration, irritability and anger, and especially in boys and men, that anger seems to come up, that irritability for whatever reason, and it's more of an acting out thing, but that's part of it. And so the anxiety, he also, from what they say, had more, seemed like he was in pain a lot, so stomach aches and back aches and headaches, and kind of like what you think with like the flu or cold. And then of course his sadness, and then they said at some point in time he felt really, really helpless and hopeless. And I think hopeless is like one of the worst things to feel, because when you're hopeless, what do you do about that? If you feel like things aren't going to change, there is no hope. What do you do with that feeling, right? And so that's why it's so important for people around somebody that's feeling this way, is to provide some sort of hope, some sort of support, so that you can get through this. We're here with you. Of course, some of the behaviors that come from that, when somebody feels this way, and by the way, these are the common symptoms of depression, but also anxiety that's out of control, and so we're anxious all the time, not just normal anxiety. But some of the behaviors that go along with that is to feel different. People will, use substances. They will maybe start drinking, or maybe drinking a lot, to where it becomes a tool for them to just be numb and not feel things. Risky behavior, where somebody starts doing things without the worry of consequences. I'm not worried what happens to me. It doesn't matter what happens. So that feeling of no consequences, just taking risky things, and doesn't matter what happens. Acting out, where maybe the anger issues and stuff like that, where you start picking on somebody else, or you take it out on somebody else, or you just blow up at the slightest thing, tantrums. And then of course, suicidal thoughts and actions, where somebody feels like they're so hopeless that death becomes a thought process to them, and then they start thinking and how they would do it, and how making plans on how that would happen. And so those are terrible things to feel. And so the behaviors, if not checked, or not symptoms aren't kind of handled, they can get out of control and can dictate what happens next in our behavior. And unfortunately, in this case, this young man Jeff, he died at age 15. Some of the things that were in his life that or weren't there in his life that promoted this, which is the stigma, where people didn't talk about these things. They kind of kept them quiet, especially adults. You'd think adults would be not stigmatized, but adults a lot of times are, and so it might be hard to share that. No knowledge of what mental health issues are, or mental illnesses are, or depression, or any of these things, what they are, what they look like, and what the symptoms are to him. There was no assessment done for him, where he was never sat down and said, let's go through this system checklist and see what we find out about you, or nobody to talk to. And there's no therapy that followed that. So kind of that isolation and feeling alone, and the no support, because if you don't know what's wrong, right, then you don't share, because you don't want to involve people. In fact, one of the reasons why people die by suicide is they feel like a burden on everybody else, and so they just withhold it and keep it to themselves, and so they don't enable their own support systems to fall in place, and no one sees it. And then, of course, in his case, the death by suicide. And as I said, he was 15 at the time. Undiagnosed and untreated depression was the underlying causes of that death. And in fact, about 90% of suicide deaths are because of an undiagnosed and or untreated mental health issue. And depression is the majority of that because it's like the common cold of brain illnesses. And so being aware of that is very important. Another story, a different side of this, which of course is this girl named Tara. She was young, in fact, very outgoing, and this happened to be Jeff's sister. And as she adored her brother, you know, and would follow him around and just want to hang out with him. As I said, you know, Jeff was a caring person, in fact, very sensitive and would outreach and try and help other people. But so here she is standing next to her brother and just kind of hanging there, want to play football, and then as she was in the next room. She was 7 years old when he died. When he took his life, she was in the next room. And there's a lot of commotion and a lot of things that happened after that. And she kind of got lost in it because of, if you can imagine the trauma that would happen, and she just kind of just was quiet. When she turned 15 years old, all of a sudden she was the same age as her brother. And this nightmare started coming back to her, and this feelings of guilt and feeling of not, you know, being there for him, and remembering that moment over and over. And the night terrors came, so waking up in the middle of the night. And in fact, many of those same symptoms that hampered him started setting in with her. But I'll tell you, there's a different outcome. Somewhere in her high school, when she was about, 1.4 GPA, was very low, because she struggled, and would call home a lot, and saying, I don't feel good, didn't want to go to school. All those things we talked about, right? But eventually she ended up going and getting her, she graduated, went to junior college, went to community college and got her degree there. Then she went on to Eastern Michigan University. She graduated there with honors, high GPA. And then she went on and received her master's, again, with a 3.86 GPA. And with her master's, she became a licensed counselor, master of social work. And so things were quite different. And then she was married, as you can see in the picture. This is our family, the whole family. And yes, you figured out by now, I'm sure, that this is both my son and daughter. So what was the difference? What changed for Tara that was different than Jeff? First of all, the stigma. It was reduced because of her father's treatment. I went to treatment. I was their dad. And I finally got to treatment, after Jeff died, hit bottom, just all kind of destructive behavior because I didn't know what to do with it. I finally got treatment. There's no knowledge, for Jeff, but for Tara, she was educated by the Depression Center. That's where I ended up working and gained all kinds of information, and so was able to provide information on what was going on. No assessment. Well, there's online assessments for screening, so she was screened, and then it was to the tune of understanding that she needed to see a therapist, and so she got therapy. So the no therapy for Jeff became therapy for her, and it was trauma-based therapy, trauma-based cognitive behavioral therapy. So it has to do with thinking and rethinking and your thoughts and how our thoughts can change the way that we feel. And then support, where Jeff didn't have any support because nobody understood what was going on. Tara had full family, school, and friend support in all areas. She was supported. And where he died by suicide, she has lived to help others as a therapist. Two completely different sides of the story. And I think it says a lot about what we can do when we understand something and when we reach out and get the support that we need and able to do something in treatment and if we need it. But if nothing else, just the support you need, somebody to talk to and somebody to work through some of these things. And so what is it that, that kind of ties all this stuff together? I was in the middle of all of it. I was affected profoundly by it. on both sides. As I said, after just death, I I had a pretty public crash and burn, and but through recovery, I learned one thing that we can do. It's called acceptance. You know, we accept the things that happen. We can't change. We can't. There's certain things we can't control, so we accept that. But the one thing that we can control, and we always can control it, is what you do about it, what you do next. And so I accept who I am. You know, acceptance of who you are is really important. But acceptance of circumstances and things that do happen in the past. Okay, accept those things and get ready for your journey and moving forward. And so that also requires bounces every now and then. Like, nobody is perfect, and nobody goes through recovery without having things that don't happen to them. There are other adversities that happen. There's other transitions that happen. So the ability to bounce back up again, and over time, learned resilience. You start learning, how to do this and how to be more resilient through the tools that you learn, and you find out those bounces aren't so big anymore. You start getting used to being able to take them in and go with the flow, and bounce back quicker, and go through adversities. Doesn't mean things don't hurt. Things can hurt. Doesn't mean things don't happen. This is life. Things happen. But it does give us the ability to be much more resilient and take them on as they come. And in fact, what we do is we learn that, we can bend with the wind. The wind can be as strong as we know this year with all the, category, hurricanes and storms that are coming across and devastating many areas, that it can destroy a lot of things. But when we learn that we can bend with them and be strong with that, and not get blown over, but bounce back, so we can be tall and strong again, in the sun and in the sunshine. So learning resilience. So learn, that's a word that is important in this whole equation. So learning, we actually become our thoughts, right? And so how does learning work? Okay, first of all, let's understand something, that the brain plasticity, the ability to be able to shape and mold, and that's what that word means, right? That we're always shaping and always molding. And in fact, our brain, which has, trillions of connections, are always forming connections, are tweaking some and letting go of others, and forming new ones as we learn and move forward. But learning in itself is really an experimentation. We try certain things, and if it works out for us, oh, we like that, and we'll try it again. If certain things don't work out for us, then we say that wasn't a good way to go, and so we don't do that again. And so we won't, form and make that a habit of ours, right? And so it's experimentation. This experimentation has a feedback loop. As I said, so good, it'll do it again. Bad, try and stay away from it. And as the brain goes through this feedback loop and shaping and trimming and forming our brains all the way through our lifetime. It doesn't stop at like 20, 25 or 26, right? It can be really prolific in our teenage years, because that's actually where we do a lot of experimentation, trying to push boundaries and trying to figure out who we are and where we fit in. But that feedback loop, as it works, it starts getting certain things that we do and we like, or they work for us. And so we start practicing them and practicing them and practice them. That again, practicing them. And what happens is they become a habit. And after a while, if we do them enough, we don't have to think about them anymore. They become ingrained in our subconscious, and they become habit, and we do them automatically. That is fantastic, because we don't have to waste energy on it. But there is a bad side to that. And the bad side is if we practice bad things and bad habits, they become bad habits. And that means naturally we'll do those things subconsciously without even thinking about them. And that could be, certain things that we think about, and the way that we feel, the way that we think, bad habits. They become subconscious to us, and we do them automatically. That's why these core beliefs that we form, over time, by what we practice, the way that we see the world, what we believe in, because we've been taught it. And as I said, they're the central ideas of about ourselves, others, and the world. It's how we see it. So if we take on a lot of negative, habits because of the way that we've been shaped, the things that's happened to us, or the people that we believe in or listen to, then we start, if we get these negative bad core beliefs, I can't do it, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And if we start believing those, they'll start interfering with the way that we see the world and the way that we shape ourselves and the way that we move forward and the way that we think. Instead of attempting something, no, I'm not good enough, so I'm not going to try that. So I won't involve myself in something. Or the world's a terrible place, it's coming to an end, and all this stuff's happening. So I won't, I won't try and change things, or I'll isolate, or I'll just bury my head, under my pillow or in the sand, because I don't want to engage. So those negative things can be problematic. But the good news is we're not born with these things, right? As I said, we learn them over time. And so that means if we're learning positive things about ourselves, and that becomes our core belief, I think I can, I start being positive about the things that happen to us. So I get rid of these negative thought patterns and the things that people are telling us. I said, no, I think I can do this. And we start bolstering our own self-confidence, and the way that we see the world, it starts changing for us. It sometimes takes an effort because, like I said, we're not born with them, they're learned. And if we learn them wrong, we have to change them. And that's the beautiful thing. They can be rigid and seem like they're long-standing, because if you've been told long time that you're not worthy, you're not good, you can't do it, it's hard to break that, but you can, okay? And that's the wonderful thing. We can, by the way that we shape, the way that we change, the way that we view the world again, but they can be changed. And brain plasticity, this thing that we can also start thinking about, we can start rewiring our brain, and instead of that negative thing that was a habit, we start putting in other practice, and practicing good things, practicing positives. And then that becomes the new habit. We can change the world that way, change ourselves and change the viewpoint of the world that way. It also ties into our emotions. Depending on what my belief system is and how I see the world, it tells me also how I deal with emotions. Emotions, we all have them. These are the 5, basic emotions that everybody has. And I like to use these common emotions because when you're talking to somebody, it is a thing that connects us. If you talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm angry, they automatically know what angry is because they feel anger too. Maybe not at that moment, but they know what anger is because they felt it. If I say I'm sad, people know what sad is. It's an emotion that we all have. Joy, same thing. Fear, right? And then disgust, right? Those things we all have them. Now, how they express themselves is something different. So how they express themselves as feelings, this is the emotion. The emotion is a core piece of a physiologically reaction to something that happens to us. Something jumps out in front of us, fear, okay? That's the emotion. Well, what that does to our feelings, right? And how we interpret that, those are our feelings and what we do with those things, right? So by managing our thoughts and our behaviors, we can actually change not the emotion, but we change the feeling about the emotion. So if I have an emotion, fear, right? And I just want to jump and turn and run away, all right? Or I put my head underneath the pillow, right? And I sit there and shake for a while. And it could be all kinds of fears. It could be, the fear of, of getting sick. It could be the fear of, and so how do we, deal with that, right? So our thoughts can actually take a moment and say, what is this fear? Where's it coming from? What emotion? What caused this emotion to happen? What was the thing that caused it? And then, is it real? And am I in danger? If I'm not in danger, okay, and maybe it's just a fear that I feel, okay, because it's tied to a core belief, then I can change that. And so by thinking about it and changing your thought pattern, saying, this is not real, there's no reason to be scared right now, my life is not in danger. And that means I change my behavior. Instead of putting my head under the pillow and hiding, maybe I'll go about my business and say, okay, I'm aware of it, and I'm here with it, but I can go forward, and I can go to school, I can go out and enjoy, I can go talk to people. instead of that. So our thoughts and our behaviors and our emotions, they're all tied together, and they go both ways. So if I can actually change my behavior, maybe as I'm jumping to the conclusions on these core beliefs that you're causing me when emotion jumps up, I automatically go to that. But I say, you know what, next time this happens, I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to walk it off, and I'm going to do something different. Then that can also, if I do that every time I get that fear, then I do something about it, that's my behavior, then actually after a while, it'll start changing my thoughts, and so maybe my thoughts won't go immediately to the fear. And so that's how these things are all connected and important for us to know. But the main thing is managing them. That means you have to have a certain awareness of them, of what these things are. To help us through it, because adversities do happen, the things that, the fears do happen. There are real things that are out there as well. And, we go through all kinds of transitions. We go, through parents that divorce. We go through having to move from one place to another. We go through things that happen in the world, and these might seem chaotic and chaos and scary at times. And so in order to get through those things, developing a resilience plan is very helpful. And so there's 4 parts of this plan. The first one is understanding, where your support comes from. So people you rely on, and it could be anybody, but people that you rely on. It could be a parent, it could be a coach, it could be, a teacher, friends that you trust, and that means somebody you can talk to without worrying about them using against you, right? Somebody you can talk to and be real, and they can be real in listening and also helping you. Just support your thoughts and what you're thinking about, what you're going through. So it almost gives you like a feedback, part of the feedback loop we were talking about, right? To help you with that. And of course, there's also professional support, maybe a counselor at school, somebody who's been trained in mental health issues to maybe walk you through it, like therapists can. So that's your support system. Know who they are. And second of all, the coping strategies. So when things do happen, all right, and I'm right in the middle of it, okay, this is happening, okay, fear's starting to catch up to me. What's my coping strategies? Okay, deep breathing. Oh, calms down, right? Brings down the tension out of your neck and kind of calm you down. 4x4 is just a way of breathing. I can take deep breath in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe it out for 4, pause for 4, breathe in for 4. It's just like forming a square, and you do that until you're relaxed. I can burn off steam, right? I can do something like I can exercise. I can go for a walk, go for a quick run. I can go outside somewhere and scream, right? Burn it off. Whew. Okay, get it out of your system. I can also meditate. That means the ability to sit down and be calm when these things come up and you're thinking about them and letting them go, kind of just pausing with them for a minute, but get to the point where they don't bother you. They come and they go. We don't dwell and sit there and ruminate on them and think all day long about them and get caught up in them, and start getting panicked by that. There's also a type of meditation called mindfulness, which is a little bit more about being present where you are, what you're doing right now. And so you're in the moment. And so it's able to focus in and, and ground you in the moment. And so you feel yourself and where you are and not getting like that out of body experience where, whoa, this is happening, I can't control it. It puts you more in control. And there's hope building. So you're in the middle of this thing, you're coping with it. All right, I got my strategy, I'm bringing things up. Okay, how am I going to get through it? Can I get through it? And that's where the hope comes in. Remember I said about hopelessness? Put hope in there. And maybe it's something so simple as just having a saying, the ones that, athletes have, no pain, no gain, you know what I mean? Things like that, right? It could be, just mantras, every cloud has a silver lining. This darkest before the dawn. That's hopeful because, it's tough now, but it's not going to be. And then learning from your mistakes, that everything that does happen and mistakes that you make, there's a positive side of that. You can learn from it. That's fantastic, right? And then, and even sometimes, having really positive and upbeat music to listen to, something you can always put on, and it puts you in that good mood, this hopeful mood. Yep, boom, boom, I can get through this, And so, so those are your kind of building things that you have. And of course, then ultimately you want to get to the point where you can solve the problem that's causing this anxiety or this adversity or the thing that you're in the middle of. And so working towards solutions, because you don't want to just get caught into being stuck in coping mechanisms, strategies all the time, because that's kind of the in crisis moments all the time. You don't want that. You want to be able to solve the problem. So that means working towards solution, actions and behaviors, and it's adjusting to the feedback that you get from everyone and yourself even, right? So, and moving forward and solving the problem and working towards solutions. There's another thing that's really important, to have this sense of well-being, and that is values. Who are you? Who are you? That's a good question. Look in the mirror and go, who are you? How do you answer that question? Well, first of all, you understand that values is not like the core beliefs. Values is what drives you, right? It's what you resonate with. When I put certain words, on that screen right there, right? Loyalty, resourcefulness, acceptance, self-respect, love. Since certain words will resonate with you and say, yeah, that's me. That's what drives me, right? And so values are important in that because they're essential. We have to have them. They're personal. They mean something to you, and they're universal. They go with you wherever you go. And so understand what your values are. And sometimes it doesn't hurt to just take a list of values and look at them and start circling the top ones. You can print them off. Just go to Google and Google, list of values. And you print it off and just sit down with it and just, circle some of the words that mean the most to you. And then you start realizing, yep, that's me. That's who I am. That's what drives me in my heart. Okay. The other thing is, again, getting back into mental fitness, is what are the things that we can do? We've gone through coping mechanisms. We've gone through understanding. We've gone through, well, anyway, so this is the next part. What do we do? What are the mental fitness things that we can do that keeps us in mental fitness? And there are 6 pieces to this thing, and they all are connected to each other, right? This is how we strive for mental health, and once we get it, how we stay there. The first one is just recognize your choices. I'm not saying make a good choice or a bad choice. I'm not saying that. I just want you to recognize them. We need to recognize the choices that we make because we'll start realizing that we are in control of our life. We can't control the past. We can't control things that happen to us that we cannot control, but we can control what we do next. What I do next, I control. And so that part is really important because once I start realizing that, I start realizing I'm not trapped. I get to choose the next step I do. I'm not trapped in this. I'm not a victim in this. Hey, my father was an alcoholic, okay, but I'm not trapped in that. That's not going to be me. I get to choose my way from it, from whatever things that's happened to us in the past, right? And then so when I start doing that, my self-esteem starts to grow because I start realizing I am in control of everything that I do or everything that I react to. I am in control. And so that means I make some pretty good choices. I'll recognize it. Yeah, that was me. Yeah, that was me. That was pretty cool. It also means that I recognize my mistakes too. Not to beat myself up with, but just to recognize them so I can learn from them. Because when we recognize our mistakes, right, and we say, yep, I did that, it also means I can change that, okay? And so my self-esteem does grow because we learn from it. And so when my self-esteem starts growing, it starts getting healthy and in a good way. I like appreciating who I am. That's that sense of well-being starts creeping in here, right? And because I like who I am and what I can become and the choices that I'm making, that means I can also have a really good boundary, and boundaries are important. Boundaries is what separates us and our safety from the outside world, okay? And with a good, healthy boundary, I can say no to someone. No, and I can also I can protect myself, and with a good, healthy, safe boundary, I can also recognize when I start getting myself into trouble, and I'll pull back. And I say, nope, okay, that's not good for me. I'm going to stay in here, okay, here. But with a good, healthy boundary, something else happens. It means I get to choose who I allow inside my boundary. That means I get to be vulnerable because if I can protect myself, the people I allow inside, and remember that support system, friends who you trust, you can allow them inside and you can share and you can talk. And that means you're not alone and you can get answers, and it helps solve some of those problems, on the solution-oriented side of it. And of course, it helps our communication and the way that we're able to express ourselves. which helps our self-esteem, which means we can also expand that boundary, so maybe it includes more than just right here, and I start including more people inside my boundary. So through my communication. But it also takes a commitment. I'm going to say try this for a while. Try this, just recognizing everything, your choices. Sit down at the end of the day and look back on the day and say, what are some of the choices I made today? And appreciate the ones you made and learn from the other ones. Okay, but it does take a commitment. You can't do it overnight. It takes a while because just like practice, in order to make it a habit, okay, we have to practice it. Okay, that'll become normal and easy for us because we learn from it and it becomes a habit. There's also other things you can do, and the NICE action plan, which is notice, invite, challenge, and empower. Notice what's right. Invite yourself to a conversation if what you're noticing isn't right. Challenge, the stigmas and challenge the things that are around there. Challenge yourself, to learn more, and then of course empower yourself. That's empowering to know that you're in control of your life. And believe me, when you take a relationship and you take two people, it's not about being 50% and 50%. It's actually about being 100% and 100%. So your relationships are all about being healthy, and the other person can be healthy. Be nice. You'll learn more about them. I think they've got a workshop to do. So if you look them up, that'd be great. I want to say thank you very much for listening, but also again, be nice. Just the words "be nice" means something cool, right? Be nice to somebody. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm Eric Hipple. Again, please contact erichipplespeaks.com. And as I said, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for the time you've given me, and I hope maybe something I've said, might make a small difference. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.